So for your legs, it plain and simply, looking at your sheet, it says find stock that's multiples of 2 inches wide. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. It says cross cut to 24 1/4. Set fence to 1 7/8, blah, blah, blah. Here's what I want to show you. These are the pieces similar to what you're going to use. I can tell you that these are sitting off to the side because they didn't work for legs. These were some defect ones. Okay, you can see how there's some defects in this, defect there. This part, some defects. That's still from the logging process. So this is actually, these are little like crimps in from the processor. When it went through the processor head, and those heads got little spikes on them, and when the wheel fed through, it left these marks. This mark was on the outside edge of the tree, and you can see in this lighter color by the sapwood. Okay, so that one wasn't going to work. This one had some other defects and whatnot. But what I want to show you is, I don't know how well you can see it, but see on the end how the two pieces get glued together. This is in essence what you're shooting for, okay? So you guys can gather in where you can see what's up. I got these because the size is consistent. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna make pieces. Everybody look at your sheet right now in front of you. It says find stock that's multiples of 2 inches wide. Now I'm getting down to number 2. I'm saying set fence on the table saw to 1 7/8. Okay. So, under 2A, it says rip enough for 8 pieces, 1 7/8 by 24 1/4. So what was just asked of me is, like, we're looking for boards that are, 2 inches wide, 4 inches wide, 6 inches wide. Yes, you are. You're looking for something close to 2. But trees don't grow in exact increments of 2, 4, 6, and 8, right? They grow in whatever. The sawmill sets their saw to whatever to yield the most that they can. They ship it here, it might be 8 1/4. Does that work? Yeah. You're gonna check with me. Okay? I'll give you approval or disapproval. What about like 7 3/4? Does that work?
No.
Yeah. And this is where we're gonna go over here. Come on. Quickly. Here's where you got to get a little bit creative. I want you to think outside the box and solve a problem. Thus far, when you've glued, that's a different class. I've talked to my other classes about nothing wider than 4 inches that we can glue together. Okay, you'll learn about that here shortly. But if let's say we got a piece that's 7 3/4. Okay, it's 1 inch thick. And our length, all of them in there are 100 inches long, but our length is whatever. Let's call it 100 inches long. Okay, it's a full board. 7 3/4. So I said it's gonna work. I don't even have my phone on me because it's in Dylan's hand. So do me a favor. Somebody grab your phone. Grab your phone. Do this. 7.75 divided by 4 pieces. What do you get?
1.9375.
1.9375. Anybody know what that means? Anybody know what that is?
Right underneath.
1 15/16. Ironically enough. It's exactly that. Okay? How big is this saw kerf where it's going to cut right here? The part that turns to sawdust. How big is that?
16.
8.
1/8 of an inch. Which I haven't talked about this yet. So this stuff is all new to you. I start you on a cutting board because you needed to learn these machines. Now we're starting to get into the finer points of why we do things in a certain manner. 1/8 of an inch. What's half of an 1/8?
16th.
A 16th. So what if I take this minus 1/16? What do I get?
14, 16.
7/8.
1 14/16, which is 1 7/8. Does that seem familiar? There we are, right? So when I say look for boards that are 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 wide, that's not always completely accurate. If you got something that's close, we can usually make it work, okay? So here's what you're gonna do. Meet me over here for a sec. You're gonna find boards that you think work. You know, so make believe that this was all one board. That would be about 6 or so wide. You would set up. Notice how I said, right on step 2, set fence to 1 7/8. Do not set it to 2. Set it to 1 7/8. Okay? Rip your pieces. Then you're gonna do that same teeter-totter test. That goes without saying, but number 3 on here says joint one face of each of the 8 pieces, keeping as thick as possible and put an X on it. Here's the deal. These only get jointed as few times as you have to make them flat. You're gonna take this piece. This one hasn't been jointed because it had this gunk on it. So you'll take it on a metal table and you'll teeter-totter it just like what you did with each of your pieces for your cutting board, okay? Teeter-totter it, find the one that's more stable, joint that one, and if you need to, take a pencil and make some scribbles on here so that you can see when all those scribble marks are gone and when it's wiped clean, you're done. Put an X on it, and then what you're gonna do is once you have your 8 pieces, you're gonna try to find colors that look similar. You're gonna try to find grains that look similar. You're gonna try to do a few other odds and ends like that. And then those are the ones that you're gonna mate up together, and that's gonna become one leg. So like at first glance, this one actually, this leg was done poorly, which is why it's probably in my possession, but you can see that joint, it looks very poor, okay? This side looks a little better. It's not great, but like there's another example of one. You gotta look pretty hard to see the seam between these, right? You can verify that the seam is right there. So there's a seam right here, okay? If you look on this side, it's a little bit noticeable, okay? This side, you gotta look pretty hard at it. That's the nature of the beast. That's what you're trying to do. You wanna get that to blend in. That's the end goal, okay? So what's gonna happen as an end goal is you're gonna be left with a leg that's 1.5 inches by 1.5 inches by 23 1/4 or whatever they are, yeah. So go step by step, got it? It all starts with this, which starts with finding material. Don't cut that yet. Come here. You've been making everything out of maple, walnut, and cherry. Now you're gonna make it out of oak. Oak is kind of the standard that we use around here. Not around here, but in the shop, because it's cost effective, it's readily available. I can order a big bunk of it, once a year, and that's enough to get us through the year. And it helps to minimize our costs and keep everything down. So that being said, this is oak, okay? It's a hardwood. The lines are, relatively close together, but we'll talk a lot more about it as a raw material throughout the year. But I need you to notice the difference between this and like the walnut and the cherry and the maple that you've been using thus far. The oak is down here on the bottom, but now I can see that there is some maple that has gotten mixed in with it because people have just kind of jockeyed things around. So you have to be cognizant of it. Again, you check with me before you cut anything. Don't get offended if I say, nope, that's not oak. Take it back. It's not oak. Put it back where you found it, or put it back where you think that it should belong, and we'll go from there. But occasionally things do get mixed up. But normally something this size would stay back by the miter saw, but the full-size boards are in here. Usually once they get to be about less than 6 feet long, then they can stay out there back by the miter saw, and then they're easier to pick and grab off of there. Questions? Anything?